FBI has launched a study to better understand the psychology of mass shooters. Evidence shows mass shootings have increased significantly in recent years. Four of the five deadliest incidences in the U.S. history have occurred since 2012. Just in 2017 alone, there were 30 active shootings resulting in 138 deaths. That's actually the highest total on record. The Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that the agency has already examined the case files of 63 shooters and have begun interviews. Yesterday, I spoke to Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's a former FBI profile. We discussed the program and exactly what can happen moving forward. I want to ask you, what are some of the findings from the FBI so far, and what really stands out to you?
I think one of the things that stands out the most is that there has been a shift since Columbine, what I would call a seismic shift in the motivation of these shooters. So before Columbine, you had shooters who would go in and they had a grievance. They were younger. Their motivation was a little bit less involving ideation of becoming somebody really important, somebody really world famous. It was really a lesser offense in a lot of ways, just in terms of those variables. But then following Columbine, now you see shooters that plan it much further ahead. These are also individuals that really want a lot of attention. They want the credit for it. And you see them demonstrating that on social media. These shooters now, again, post-Columbine, are also older. So the difference is that this now has become part of our DNA, which is extremely unfortunate. But the caliber and the quality, the type of shooter has really changed post-Columbine.
You say the type of shooter has changed post-Columbine. What would you say, Mary Ellen, is the difference between a mass shooter from, say, a serial killer?
Oh, huge difference. A serial killer is someone who kills two or more people over a period of days, weeks, months, or years. And so they go back and under the cover of darkness, so to speak, and maintain or attempt to maintain a quote-unquote normal lifestyle so that they don't get caught. A mass shooter, on the other hand, is someone who goes into that school or into that business or that venue and shoots and commits an incredibly large crime all at once, and generally will suicide or be killed by law enforcement at that same time. So the mentality of a mass shooter, very different from the mentality of a serial killer.
Are we learning anything about why mass shootings have become just so common in recent years?
The one change that I think is very concerning is the motivation for these offenders. They're going in with maximum weapons. They're going in for maximum lethality, and they're very proud and they want that kind of attention, that kind of notoriety. In the shootings that I studied in the FBI's initial research on school shooters, you didn't see that kind of psychological makeup. It really wasn't until Columbine that we saw that shift. The only case that demonstrated the same characteristics was Charles Whitman back in 1966 at the Texas Tower shooting. But then things were quiet, and then we started to see these shootings, but they didn't take on the quality that we've seen certainly post-Columbine and then certainly within the last several years.
Marilyn, do we have a sense as to why mass shootings are more common in the U.S. than any other countries? Did this study look at that?
Yes, they looked at that, but there are several reasons, too, and I think that's part of the reason that the FBI is continuing their research, because these crimes are dynamic, which means they're changing every couple of years, and so we have to track what those changes are. But we absolutely know that social media presence has an influence on these crimes. Not that it's the motivation for it, but when Columbine occurred, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, they didn't have access to social media. We barely had email then. They had violent video games. But when you compare their crime, it was horrible. But to the events of today, our society was quite different. And we really have got to measure what the influence of social media is in these types of crimes.
Do you have any hope that the FBI will be able to take this information and try and stop these mass shootings from happening?
Oh, yes. The FBI is quite capable of conducting a very fine research, and they'll make it multidisciplinary and they'll make it collaborative. But to conduct a very good quality of research, which they will do, and to say that we can stop it are two different things. The problem that we have right now is the shooters are being born into a society, which is ours, where mass shootings are part of our DNA. So the tentacles that have developed over the last almost 20 years have created a different type of individual who's now responsible for these shootings. So our remedy for this is going to be a lot more complex and a lot more complicated because it's been allowed to go on for so many years, quite frankly.
Mary Ellen O'Toole, thank you so much for joining us, Mary Ellen.
You're welcome.